So I am with Caleb Newquist. Caleb is a accountant, CPA, journalist, entrepreneur.
Yep. All those things have a degree of accuracy.
And so I'm very excited to have you on the Doug McConey vlog. This week we're talking about careers, and been sharing with the vlog kind of my career path, kind of how I started in accounting. I shared a story with my viewers that they promised not to share with anybody else, that I picked accounting because I knew I wanted to do business. I already knew I was going to go to law school, and I heard that accounting was the toughest and it was math oriented. Yeah. And after my first accounting course, my intermediate accounting course, I got my one and only F in my entire academic career.
Congrats.
And my professor...
That's the weed out class.
It's the weed out class. My professor calls me in her class and says, you need to think about an alternative profession. And so I was like, okay. I went and talked to my dad, and I was like, Dad, I've decided I don't want to do accounting. I'm going to major in philosophy. And he was a pretty patient guy.
Did he yell at you?
Oh, he was like, son, I'm paying for you to go to college to learn how to do something.
Yeah.
And I don't care what it is. It doesn't have to be engineering. It doesn't have to be accounting. It can be nursing. It can be education. You learn how to do something. And I was like, okay, I'll stick with accounting. Okay. So I think I got an accounting degree to spite that professor, and I went to law school to
spite yourself.
Yeah. to get out, because I didn't want to be an accountant. Now 18 years at PricewaterhouseCoopers, I'd love to find that professor.
Yeah.
Right. But I still honestly struggle with some of the debits and credits. And so talk about how did you end up in accounting? What kind of inspired you to go into accounting? And then to talk a little bit about your career path at KPMG and ultimately ending up at goingconcern.com.
Yeah. So I took my first accounting class in high school as a junior. And I loved it because it had numbers, but it wasn't calculus. And I kind of took to it. I had a great accounting teacher in high school by the name of Derry Trampy, who won't see this probably, but I should.
He's not a big YouTuber.
I should probably not, but I should name drop him anyway.
My subscription following is short enough that we could probably go through and see if
he's on it. Got it. Right. So I really liked accounting in high school, and I thought, well, I had a buddy whose dad was a CPA, and he was a great guy. He worked really hard, but they had a nice house and they had a nice boat, and I'm like, this guy's got the life.
Good lifestyle.
Yeah. And so I thought that was a good idea, and I pursued that in college, and
you went to University of Nebraska?
I went to Nebraska Kearney, so it's Nebraska.
Okay.
So
public school?
It is a public school. Yeah, they play a lot in the Denver area. They're in the Rocky Mountain West.
Okay.
So lots of people in Colorado know UNK. Yeah, it's D2.
Okay.
And so a lot of people around here know it because they play Fort Lewis and Metro right here in Denver, and some of the other smaller Colorado schools.
But suffice it to say, you're a Cornhusker fan.
I am. From day one. That's how it goes.
Absolutely, of course.
It's the Church of Huskers.
I'm from St. Louis. I'm a Cardinal fan.
Yeah.
We've got a similar philosophy with our baseball Cardinals.
Yep. So
did the accounting program there?
Did the accounting program there?
Was that a 4-year or 5-year program?
It was a 4-year program, and
you're showing your age.
Yeah, I am for sure. I wasn't great at accounting. I was looking at my transcripts just the other day, and my wife says to me, "You got a C in accounting?" And I said, "That's the weed out class." Like it was intermediate. Like it was.
That's
the
what I shared.
Yeah,
I got A's on the next 2 exams,
Yeah.
and that lady still gave me a C. I was like, I was right on the verge.
So not only that, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. But then I looked at my Gmat scores, which was kind of in the same pile, and on my Gmat score for grad school, I was in the bottom third for the analytical computational. I was in the top third for the verbal, and I was in the top 10% for the essay portion.
Okay.
So I'm 23 years old after I had completed that accounting program, and it's staring right in front of me what I should be doing maybe.
Right.
But I didn't pick up on it, because I'm 23. I don't know anything. Right. I'm an idiot.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to know. Exactly.
It's hard to know. So, but I was determined. I wanted to be a CPA.
Okay.
Like when I got out of school, Well, I'm sorry, when I finished my undergrad, I was determined to get a CPA, and so I decided to move to Colorado to go to Colorado State. I had a friend that had moved to Fort Collins, and I had visited him a couple of times, and I thought, hey, this is a great town.
Great community.
I came from a small town in Nebraska, so it's like I was slowly moving to slightly bigger places, and Fort Collins was kind of the next step. And they have a beautiful campus up there, and I studied with great teachers, and I got my master's, and was ready to sit for the CPA, and knocked out the CPA in one shot because I took it when it was written. It was the last written exam, and that was very exciting.
Okay.
And I got to work, and so.
Where did you start?
I started at a small firm called Spicer Jeffries, and
Here in Denver?
Here in Denver,
Okay.
Yep, down in the tech center, and did that for a couple of years. And they were a niche firm. They specialize in financial services, mostly broker dealers and hedge funds and fund of funds and stuff like that. So I got a little bit of kind of that alternative investment bug, and so I actually then, after doing that for a couple of years, I got someone from KPMG actually got in touch with me, and I during the interview process, I kind of talked about how I had this interest in alternative investments. I thought they were interesting, kind of took to it. And so they said, well, this is what we've got going on. They had some private equity clients here in Denver, which was kind of surprising at the time. It was different from hedge funds a little bit, but still in the same realm. And I got to work on some of that stuff here in Denver. And it was really great, really interesting.
So you took the job with KPMG here in Denver.
I skipped that step.
Okay.
I did take the job with KPMG, and because all my grad school friends, they took jobs with big firms, and I took a job with a small firm.
And why was that?
I'm glad you asked. It was actually, so when I was new in Fort Collins, I didn't know anyone. And I didn't really know the campus. I mean, I didn't really know, career placement services. I was kind of just late to the game. And so like when I did interview with PwC, but it was really competitive. And some of the people in my grad school class were some of the sharpest people I've ever known. And so like, PwC wasn't going to take me. I had C's in intermediate.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, so it was only because I went to law school that I ended up getting any interest in the public accounting firms.
Right.
My GPA, frankly, just wasn't high enough in undergrad for me to even get an interview, let alone an offer.
Right.
But I knew I wanted to go to law school anyway. But that was kind of, everybody's path is different as far as how they
and I mean, the experience with the small firm was good because I really didn't know, I kind of had an affinity for tax also. Those are the classes I did best in. I had kind of I've always been a bookworm. So like I had the nose for research and that kind of stuff. And so when I got to do tax work at a small firm, that's the work I did best at. Like the auditing wasn't really for me, but again, kind of like the Gmat thing, I really kind of rejected what was in front of me and I kind of kept pursuing, more financial financial accounting and auditing. So that's what I got into at KPMG.
Okay.
And so I started at that small firm, had that experience for 2 years, and then moved to a big firm because I had to know for myself. I had to know what that was like. Like I just couldn't, because everyone would tell you, it's like, oh, don't do it. It's it's this, it's that, it's whatever. You don't want to work at a big firm. And I said, yeah, but I really kind of have to experience it for myself. And so I did that. And I was in the Denver office for about 18 months and worked really hard, met lots of great people, made lots of great friends. But then I just kind of had an itch to do something else. And so I had met a senior manager in the alternative investments practice at a training.
Okay.
And he said, if you like working on private equity stuff, you come to New York and
that's where it is.
That's where it is. That's where the action is.
What level were you at this point?
I was a senior.
Associate or senior?
I was a senior associate. And so I did that. I put in for a transfer, and I had a lot of support from the partners here in Denver. They thought it was a good move at the time. And so I went to New York City, and that was a huge move. I mean, coming to Denver, like when I left
Nebraska to Fort Collins to Denver to New York City.
That's it. And I had been to New York on a couple of occasions with my first firm, with Spicer Jeffries. They had some clients in New York, and I love the city, and I just kind of got that itch to experience that and kind of be in it totally.
Yeah.
And so,
where'd you live?
I lived in, my first place was on 11th Street in the East Village.
Nice.
Right outside Alphabet
Did
City.
you have a roommate? Was it like?
Nope. I had a studio apartment.
Do you remember what the square footage was?
I actually measured it one time and it was like 233.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Did it have any had a kitchen?
Had a kitchen.
A bathroom.
My
a
closet
bed?
was in the kitchen. The closet was in the kitchen. The bathroom was actually pretty standard bathroom size, so that wasn't. But it was basically like you walked in and it was just a hotel room.
Right.
It was just square.
Small.
So it was nice and symmetrical.
Okay. Okay.
Like it wasn't like one of those railroad
Right.
style studios where you kind of like you have to have like a twin.
Right.
It wasn't like that. I was able to have a decent size couldn't be too big.
Right.
My bed was comfortable.
Cool.
But then, yeah, my closet was in the kitchen.
And
That was
you're
the
going there
nice
for the
thing.
experience, not for
Totally.
not
I
for the
mean,
real estate,
I
obviously.
slept in that apartment, and that's
bad.
pretty much it. Yeah, and then I lived in Brooklyn, which I loved. I lived in the kind of Flatbush, Kensington area, which is
Those were kind of the early days.
It was.
of Brooklyn.
right. So and that was about '08. So the East Village was totally gentrified by then,
Okay.
and Brooklyn, especially in that area of Brooklyn, it was just starting. So there was an Amish furniture store.
Okay.
There was a great wine shop, and there was a bar that was a flower shop during the day, and there was a bar in the evening, and like
Nice.
one great restaurant,
Okay.
and that was it. And it was it was basically Coney Island Avenue and Cortelyou Road.
Okay.
So it's halfway to Coney Island. And so I had an hour on the train every day, which I read more than I ever had.
Okay.
And
What were you reading? Like, I mean,
oh God,
work
all kinds
stuff
of-
or like nonfiction or
it was
fiction?
escapism.
Okay.
Like, so I was reading like everything. That's when I first read Nassim Taleb.
Okay.
So that's The Black Swan was brand
Yeah.
new, and so I read that. I remember reading that. I read Shakespeare. I read
Okay.
all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
I had an hour.
Yeah.
And so it was just and I usually got a seat on the train. I was on the queue, for those of you that know.
Okay.
I rode the queue, and I just had a lot of time, and I had a seat. I would always get a seat, and so I could read, and I'd pretty much be left alone, and it was great.
And how'd you like the work experience in New York and in public?
I mean, I took to it because I really enjoyed alternative investments. I thought that was an interesting area of the financial services practice, and I really took to that. I worked on a huge team when I moved to New York. Because I probably shouldn't name the client, but
Yeah.
I'll just, the client I worked on was a big investment bank,
Okay.
and it was their alternative investment kind of wing or arm. And we did lots and lots of fund audits.
Did you have any good mentors, whether partners or even managers, anything that sticks in your mind as far as
I had
people that helped influence you or helped transitioning from Denver to New York?
when I initially got there, I did. Yep. And then I had people that kind of just got me comfortable, got me associated with the team, introduced me to some good people. And then it became, I had even just some seniors that were just slightly more experienced than me that were really good at kind of showing me the ropes around the New York office, because it's a big office. I mean, the Denver office, I think, KPMG's Denver office is a decent size,
Okay.
but the New York office is six times.
yeah.
It's like 5 or 6 times the size.
Ours is a quarter of our whole
Yeah.
U.S. practice.
And so it's easy to kind of get lost in the shuffle in an office that size. So I guess I would say the one thing I learned from that is I think one of the mistakes that I made was I don't think I was at that time, I wasn't aggressive enough in finding like a champion for me, or like a sponsor or mentor or whatever. I had plenty of mentors and plenty of people to talk to, but I needed somebody in my corner like all the time.
Yeah.
And that's something that I didn't do, I didn't pursue to the degree, or I started pursuing it maybe too late. And so that was one of the things
just if I can flesh that out.
Yeah,
That's,
please.
A couple points there is that it's important, to be proactive, to be able to find that mentor, particularly in the larger offices. It doesn't matter what you're doing, to find somebody, that can be a mentor and that can help. And
especially early on, because I think if you get to the senior manager and partner level, I mean, they don't give you the choice. They're like, this person's going to be your buddy.
Right.
And
but even then, you need the informal mentors,
Yep.
and I have those, and Mike Urs,
Yep.
who's formerly my boss, but he was a mentor before he was formally my boss. So even at the partner level, I mean, I don't think that stops in your career, but you keep going.
I just can't say enough about it because and like you said, especially at the bigger offices, it's competitive and it's also, and people are busy. So you kind of have to say, hey, no, I really want your help. If you connect with someone, you should really pursue that because it's really easy to have maybe transactional relationships, but to really engage with someone and get to know somebody and for them to get to know you, that really just deepens the relationship in a way. And so that when, the way these firms work is that you really got to have a champion that's going to speak up for you when it comes to promotions and assignments and all kinds of things. So that's a really important lesson.
And I don't think that's unique to public accounting.
No,
in any large
isn't.
org, in any type of large organization that you're working for. The other comment that you made that really resonated was, that you had other fellow seniors that helped, transition you. And one of the other things that I like to preach, that's probably not the right word, but the other thing that is that leadership doesn't necessarily have to be hierarchical, right? Like you can be at the same level and be a leader we get so, particularly in public accounting, where we think about partner and then senior manager, we call them directors and PwC just to confuse everybody, and then manager and senior and associate. You think about that hierarchy, but leadership doesn't have to be hierarchical, right?
Yeah.
Like you can help your fellow seniors, you can help your fellow associates.
Yep.
And that's critical for high performing teams, right? That happens at all levels and sometimes even upwards.
Yeah, that was probably one of the things that I enjoyed most was I enjoyed the mentorship aspect a lot. I had a lot of people that asked me to be their mentor at the time. I really don't know why, but I had a lot of people that wanted to ask me for advice or wanted to talk about things, and I did the best I could. I mean, maybe I was a bit of an outsider, coming from Denver and being in New York, but I had the opportunity to do that, and I think people enjoyed it and get things out of it. I mean, because it's it's really it's really easy, I think, to kind of get in your own head and kind of try to flesh these things out in your own mind, kind of mentally. But unless you have people that you trust and that you can talk to and be honest with, you're really not going to get an objective perspective. And I think that you need that. So you need somebody that can be honest with you.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of times what you'll find is, I remember one training, a guy said, I've got a mentor. Like I said, when they assign you somebody, sometimes maybe it's somebody that you don't know very well, or the trust isn't just there, but it's a relationship that you still have to have. But then you need the people that won't give you the firm answer,
right?
That'll really be honest with you and say, hey, I don't think this is right for you, or the firm is going to tell you this, but I think it's this. Those kinds of relationships are really important. So I can't emphasize that enough, is finding those people that can really just be unvarnished and be really honest.
Yeah, so let's kind of explore that. I mean, so sort of that transition, out of public accounting, and so when you went from KPMG, because public accounting isn't necessarily for everybody, and I think that sometimes people have the view that, well, if you can't make partner or you can't get promoted to senior manager, that is somehow some failure in somebody's career, and which I just think is absolutely wrong, right? That everybody has different paths, everybody has different desires, things that they like and work, and so were you at KPMG in New York for how long? And then
it was about 20 months.
Okay, so a little less than 2 years.
So altogether, it was about almost 4 years with KPMG, and in public accounting altogether about 6 years.
Okay.
Yep.
And then where'd you go from KPMG?
So this was 2008.
Okay.
In the fall, and I actually remember the day that Lehman Brothers went bankrupt was September 15th, 2008.
Okay.
And we had and by this time I had moved to the tax practice. I was doing a rotation in the tax practice. Okay. And we had just filed one of our biggest tax returns for our client. It was
you were doing mostly returns?
I was doing mostly compliance at that time. Yep. Because I was rotated in, I was kind of at the mercy.
Yeah. Here's some hours. Right?
Yeah.
Here's
yeah.
Project.
Right. And but it was great because at that point I realized that tax was the thing that I should do.
Right.
I turned out to be wrong, but
It's
whatever.
more for us left brain, right brain, left brain, whatever.
I don't know. I can never keep it straight. But I remember the night before, we had literally taken the tax returns over to the client that night, like at 1 a.m.
Yeah,
And-
back in the day.
Yeah, oh yeah. Even 10 years ago, we had the boxes, and here you go.
It doesn't work like that anymore.
No, I know. I mean, it's crazy how fast it changes.
I know.
But then so Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, and then the world started falling apart.
Right.
And like KPMG had big layoffs that fall, and I was part of that. I had lots of friends that were part of that.
Sure.
I mean, that's what was going. All the firms did it.
Oh yeah.
At that time.
Absolutely.
It was a big shift, especially in the New York offices. There's a lot of people that's where their careers ended
Right.
in the Big Four. And in New York in general, the job market was pretty tough. So, and I was in a relationship with a woman back here in Denver, so I moved back to Denver to kind of land on my feet, or that was my landing pad. And I was unemployed for like 3 months.
Okay.
And what's interesting is that I had a great exit interview with KPMG, and the guy that I had the exit interview with, he had these materials, and he said, I give these to everybody, and not everybody fills them out, but you sound like somebody who could maybe really benefit from filling these out and really exploring what it is that you want to do. And I did. There was something about.
It was like a personality assessment kind of thing, or a
No,
professional assessment?
I mean, it was kind of maybe, I wouldn't say personality assessment, but maybe career assessment,
Okay.
or maybe kind of just something really holistic where
Okay.
you really had to, it's like, what do you want to do, or what do you not want to do? And I listed these things. And so it really helped me kind of think about what I was going to do next. And so that was kind of a turning point, because after about 3 months of not having a job and not having any luck really finding anything, I took an analyst job with an insurance brokerage down here back in Denver.
Okay.
And by this time, I had been writing on the internet for about 9 months.
Okay.
9-10 months.
You started blogging.
I started blogging I guess that would have been 08.
Do you have your own website, or do you use one
So
of
back then, and I think they still have it, Google had Blogger.
Okay.
That was their
Yeah.
platform. And it was really easy to just throw one up, and you could customize it however you wanted. And the interface was really simple. Here's a box and type away, and italics and bold, and here's how you link. And so at that time I was reading, in New York, so everything that was going on between like the Bear Stearns bankruptcy, the fund bankruptcies,
Sure.
and like Elliott Spitzer and then Lehman Brothers, like all this stuff was going on. And so I was consuming so much media and reading bloggers that I liked, like really kind of getting tapped into writing style and blogging style and all that. And so I thought, wow, this is funny, and this is interesting, and this is still kind of work related.
Right.
So I started. I had a personal blog that was just mostly for my family, because all my family was in the Midwest.
Okay. So they could kind of keep up with you.
That's right. Big New York City adventures.
Totally.
And like, yes, I take my laundry out.
Right. Yeah. Part of my vlog experience is so that my mom can keep track of
Yeah,
what
right.
I'm doing while I'm traveling around.
Same idea.
Hi, Mom. But,
Yeah.
totally.
So then I started writing about work, because my work experience was not going great. I was in a pretty bad spot personally and professionally. And so my girlfriend at the time, to her credit, she said, you need an outlet. Because we were in a long distance relationship, I would get on the phone with her and I would tell her about all this stuff, and she's just like, I can't, she
can't do it.
Yeah, I was like, right, like she won't see this. This woman won't see this, but if she did, she would be like, ugh, be like. But so I did find an outlet.
My audience is growing.
Yeah,
so
no,
you never know.
you never know. You never know. So, to her credit, she was right. I did need an outlet, and so I joined a writing group, and I set up blogs, and I started writing
Online writing groups. So
no, in person, like a workshop.
Here in Denver.
It was in
New York?
Brooklyn. It was in Brooklyn. I got a
So
flyer.
other like-minded people.
Yeah, and
Neat.
so that really, so that there's a coffee shop on Cortellia Road, and it's probably still there, maybe not.
Okay.
But there was just a flyer for writing groups, and it was actually near Park Slope, so it was a little bit of a distance away from where I lived.
Okay.
But I made a point to go, and I was by far the worst writer in that writing group.
Okay.
Like, I was awful.
Well, you were trained as an accountant.
Yeah.
too. I struggled in law school because they don't really teach you how to write.
Right.
You know, when I went to law school, I was way behind just in even analytical writing, not even creative,
Yeah.
obviously.
Well, and so, like, you know, when I think about that GMAT, the GMAT, the essay portion that I scored so well on, it was, you know, when you read about, you know, what they look for in those assessments, is like they're looking about, can you make an argument? Can you analyze a situation? Can you talk about it? And so that I kind of had an affinity for that. But like, good writing is active verbs and no adverb. You know, all these things. When you take a creative writing class, they say action, action, action. Make it, you know, visual, not you know, showing, not telling.
Right.
And so when I was in that first writing group, I was thinking, it's there was still emotion in my writing, I think. But like the descriptors and the visual aspect of it, none of that had clicked yet. And so that was kind of the beginning of thinking about writing as a craft, as a way to communicate, and a way to just take the conversations and things in my head and put them on a page, digital page, I guess. The transition really started when I had been in touch with these guys who'd started sites like Dealbreaker and Above the Law, and those are blogs for lawyers and Wall Street people.
Right. And Above the Law, and I think that officially started in 2008. There was something much earlier, and I think it was one of the founders of Above the Law that, you know, particularly in the early aughts, if that's what they're called.
I think that's what they're called.
It seems a little pretentious,
frankly. It sounds weird.
It sounds weird. But, you know, that was where we went to for compensation payments, right?
Yeah.
And it was even like, because I graduated law school in 99, and that was when it was really those online forums that really gave the new hires this power to know what everybody else was making at the other big law firms.
Right.
And it really it increased the comp for my buddy. Now, of course, this didn't happen in public accounting, right? Because I knew I wanted to do international tax.
Yeah.
But my buddies at law school, I mean, a couple of them got 2 raises before they even started, right? They had an offer after their second year summer, and then during their 3rd year got a letter saying, hey, congratulations, your new salary is 20 grand more than what it was.
Nice.
And then because they felt like they needed to keep up, and then one of my buddies got 2 of those letters.
Wow.
And it's like, hey, this is great. I was accepting the job, but it was really, I think, some of those online forums. And I know you have your comp threads that are going on.
Yeah.
I think some of my partners have various views on that.
Yeah.
But it's a way for people to be able to communicate, and it's something that kind of brought me into that blogosphere and those forums when I was in law school. And you know, it's obviously provides some utility for people early in the
for sure. I mean, so those Above the Law is kind of, there would be no going concern without Above the Law.
Okay.
And so, you know, David Latt, who's the founder of Above the Law, he started that. I mean, he was my first editor and mentor. So I'm skipping ahead, but I was in touch with these guys, and they said, hey, we want to start a site about accounting. And they had just really put an ad on Dealbreaker that said, hey, we want to start an accounting website. If you know someone, put them in touch, or if you want to help us, get in touch. So I did. Sent them my resume, sent them links to my blogs, and they said, great, come to New York, we'll talk about it. And so I did. And I had only been back in Denver like 6 months by that point. Okay. And so I was thrilled to go back. Yeah. And see all my friends, of course. And we had a nice meeting, and that was on a Friday. The following Monday, they offered me the job. They said, "Hey, let's do this." I'm like, yeah, let's do this. And so I
gave notice,
and
we
started going concern.
Started a website.
We started a website, and it was crazy. We built up the archive for about a month, and then it launched officially on July 20th, 2009.
Kind of finding your voice and just figuring. I mean, at that point, it was that you kind of knew what direction you wanted. It
Yeah.
was just really building up some material to start
Yeah,
with.
so they just wanted kind of a small archive, just so I could link back to some things and, to get things started. And so I spent writing just every day. I wrote stuff that no one was going to see,
Okay.
which I was fine with, but it was one of those things where initially it felt weird.
Okay.
And then I remember waking up one morning and, my publisher telling me that the site is live. And I was just kind of surprised. I'm like, oh, I didn't know it was going to be today.
Okay.
It was, it's a small independent media company.
Right.
And so, it was exciting. It was very much like a very gritty, scrappy media company that I was a part of, albeit, a couple thousand miles away.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really exciting. And I worked, is this a family-friendly show?
Not necessarily.
Okay,
You
I
can
worked
constantly,
my ass off for like 2 years.
Okay.
Like up like 5 a.m. every day.
Just crank-
Just cranking it out.
Reading and-
reading and writing and lots of bomb throwing back in those days. And I mean, because the accounting profession, there was nothing like it online.
There was no snark.
There's
And
no
snark in accounting.
It
It was needed. Obviously, you
Right.
filled the void.
Yeah,
right?
and so I mean, at that
You're
time,
getting more than snark, so I don't mean to
yeah,
diminish that. But,
I mean, please, that's the badge of honor. The only person who was really writing online about accounting firms at that time was Francine McKenna,
okay.
and maybe Jim Peterson, who was an old Anderson guy, and he still writes too. But the two of them, I mean, they were. It wasn't necessarily, young people weren't like flocking to those sites, even though that stuff was really in depth and really kind of high level stuff. What Going Concern became was kind of this hub of people in the early days, especially talking about compensation,
Right.
trying to figure out if they were being fairly compensated for their market, for the work they were doing, like all that stuff. And that was built on the success that Above the Law had. And it
Generated views. Generated clicks,
it pretty
right?
much took hold right away. I mean, but in those early days it was rough. I mean, this was still, the internet was still kind of it was at the end of kind of the, I guess I would say for the blogosphere, kind of the Wild West, where comments were kind of totally unfiltered and like we just pretty much let anything go.
Right.
And so when I would write things that weren't compensated or weren't compensation related, people hated it. I mean, I've been called every name in the book and trolls and all that.
I believe it or not, I
Yeah.
actually have some haters on
Do
my
you?
YouTube channel.
Oh, that's
That's a badge of honor.
that you've made it.
That's what I said. That's
You've
what I told
totally
my
made it.
wife reads them and
Yeah.
takes them personally.
Of
It's
course she
hilarious. And I'm like, no, Cal, this is what I hoped for.
Yeah. I had to tell my mom the same thing. And so I said, because initially everyone who knew that I was doing this was very excited. I mean, my parents were, like when I told my parents that I was going to write on the internet for a living, they were so supportive. It was so
that's
great.
cool.
I mean, it was. I mean, because, they knew that I had wanted, they knew I had wanted to be a CPA and that they were totally supportive throughout that whole journey. But then when I decided that I wasn't happy doing that and I was going to do this other thing, again, it was nothing but support. And so, I wasn't eating out of dumpsters.
Right. Yeah, it was a paying job.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah. And so I just kind of remember telling them at the time, I said, don't read the comments, but if you do, just don't
Ignore 'em.
Yeah,
Right.
just don't worry.
Don't
about it.
respond.
Yeah, don't worry
I'm
about it.
Caleb's
Yeah,
mom.
right.
I'm Caleb's
So just-
mom. Please be more nice to my
Right.
son.
And so in those early days, it was still kind of crazy like that. And the internet it's probably gotten worse.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but to what I kind of learned in those days, you learn to have pretty thick skin.
Oh, yeah. You just gotta ignore it.
You just got to go. And so,
So how have you seen Going Concern evolve as far as the content that you cover?
Yeah.
Where it kind of started and frankly, because I was actually talking to some of my partners and that hey, I'm interviewing. First of all, do you know Going Concern?
Yeah.
Obviously all the young people,
Yeah.
the young people on my team are very familiar with your site and your work. And then I think some of the partners don't appreciate kind of the current event, the news source that it is now.
Okay.
Beyond, the, hey, this is where we just put our compensation threads and angry letters of people quitting.
Yes. Right.
And that's where I think you probably generate a lot of the page views.
Yeah.
Right. And then some of those links get shared, but people don't necessarily understand the depth of what you cover in the accounting profession.
Right.
How has that evolved from where you kind of started to where we are today for going concern?
So in the early days, like I said, there's lots of bomb throwing, lots of gossip, and lots of money, and that's what everybody loves. So what we found over the course of, I would say probably the first 2 or 3 years, especially at the end of, so about 2-3 years of like lots of bomb throwing and gossip and stuff like that. Around that time, I started getting emails from people who wanted career advice. And so I essentially became a Dear Abby for accounting professionals.
Okay.
I wrote lots of advice columns. Lots and
I
lots
remember that. I remember some of those.
Lots of advice columns. And to the extent that I was writing like 3 columns a week.
Okay.
And because we were getting so many questions.
Right.
And it was really popular content. And so we really, at that time, we realized like, here's the thing that people want. They want to talk about career paths. They want to talk about how do I find the right thing, or I need help deciding what the right thing is, or any number of, career, we called them career conundrums.
Okay.
It's endless because everything is so personal. Everything is so individualized, and rightly so. I mean, there's no, like you were saying earlier, there's no 2 paths that are the same.
Right.
And even if they're very similar, people will say to you, it's like, no, but it's mine.
Right.
Like, this is my thing. I need help with this thing. It's mine. And so we really were enthusiastic about trying to talk to people. And then not only, and that's where it just began. So
Okay.
like me writing a response to someone and giving half-baked, maybe terrible advice. Right. That's where it all started, because people in the comments then would say, Caleb, you're a moron. That's the worst advice I've ever heard. This is what he or she should do. Or they would double down and say, Caleb is right, and I would like to add this. This is one other thing to consider. And people love giving advice.
Absolutely.
I mean,
and there's no wrong answer either, right?
And there really isn't. But other than, I think what we've found over the years is that you really have to look within to find the true path. And I'm not going to get religious or, any of that stuff, but it really is like, you can talk to people, you can talk to mentors, you can talk to people you trust, and you absolutely should. But then ultimately, you have to make the decision. You have to look within yourself to find, you have to take all that information and kind of let it bang around. And then you have to be the person that decides to take the step forward to do whatever's next.
And in your case, sometimes that takes time. It takes time,
right? It takes a lot of, and I think when I think about my Big Four career, I think I was impatient, really impatient. And maybe that's youth, maybe that's my personality, I don't know. But
it's human nature too.
Human nature too, yeah, absolutely. And so, I think, and I'm not a millennial, but I think I had that millennial kind of tendency.
You're a Gen Xer like myself.
Yeah, well,
or are you or Gen Y?
It's a brief period in between. I don't know what they call it, but I take I have the cynicism of a Gen Xer, but I have very much the kind of instant gratification needs of a millennial.
I have actually have a whole vlog that I'm not sure I actually believe in any of that. I think that, that 20-somethings are 20-somethings and 30-somethings are 30-somethings, and some of those stereotypes just become convenience and maybe fodder for a lot of content.
I've written a lot about this over the last couple of years, and the thing that I've started saying is these are just people, like you say, in their 20s and 30s. If baby boomers had grown up with technology, they would be acting this way.
There's an article from one of those HR publications that I found from like the late 90s when I was starting on Gen X.
Yeah.
And I did the article and then I did find and replace, and every time they said Gen X, I replaced in millennial, and it was like the exact same. Gratification and instant gratification, the desire to want to do something larger and work for a common good.
Yeah.
It's like we all want to do that.
Yeah.
Like it's like that's not unique to millennials
Nope.
or Gen Xers or frankly our parents. You
Right.
know, and then we all end up with different paths, and then at some point you get to an age where it's just like, well, you need a job.
Right.
And you need
Well,
to-
it's so different when you think about it. Like when you think about our grandparents fought a war, like like a real war.
Right. Where the
like
whole country
right,
had to mobilize.
Right. And so for our parents, like they didn't have to do that. I mean, lots of our parents, they did fight in either Vietnam or Korea, but I mean, it didn't have the scope and the breadth and maybe the consequences of World War II. And so for that generation, so many people, they had more control over what they wanted to do. In the 30s and 40s, like all the men went to war,
Right.
and lots of the women too, or the women stayed home and they worked to support it. Nothing like that has ever happened since.
No.
And so now it's kind of like, well, what are, baby boomers, they went through the 60s, and then in the 70s and 80s, that's when they started making money and deciding, it's like, we want it all, right? But we want to do something great.
Right.
And it's the same.
It's the same.
It's the same.
It's the same.
So,
So you kind of evolve from some of the comp then to maybe more some of the advice. You know, I kind of view your website more almost like journalists now.
Yeah.
There's still certainly a lot of that content as far as obviously the comp threads.
Yeah.
But I go on to Going Concern regularly. I love the stuff that you're covering the PCAOB. I mean, it's an easy snapshot for me. And of course, PwC has their news, and that's part of my kind of my rotation of the sites and the things that I see. But I've really kind of seen your site kind of evolve to more of almost like a journalist.
Yep.
And do you view yourself as a journalist? And what have you learned about journalism?
Yeah.
As a blogger, as somebody that's providing information to people.
So I take journalism really serious. I don't take a lot of things seriously, but I take journalism really seriously. I guess I have to. That label has been kind of thrust upon me since the beginning, really.
Yeah.
And so I try to do my best to uphold the standards. Yeah. I really think it's an important thing, and I do the best that I can. So yes, I kind of self-identify, but at the same time, I don't kid myself that I'm not doing the work of, say, like what the Denver Post does or what the New York Times or whoever it is. So I guess especially these days, I think the credibility is so important. So these days I take that very seriously. Sure. So when when we talked to Tim Ryan, for example, like that was a really important thing to me, and it took me a while to make that happen, and I had to build some trust with some really good PwC people. Hi, Caroline. Right. I had to build some trust with some people to make that kind of thing happen. And this is after publishing things that aren't necessarily flattering about the firm.
Absolutely.
And so you really that takes a lot of time and patience and hard work, and I still don't even have it with some people.
Okay.
So and I think that's just journalism in general.
Sure.
It's like in some cases it's just adversarial all the time. And other times you have better relationships, and that means you get some access. And so, like interviewing like Bob Moritz, like I interviewed Bob Moritz, like God,
who famously mispronounced.
He did. He did. And
I remember following that, being excited about it. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
But,
not a big deal. He's a busy man.
It happens.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's
if I had a dog for everybody that's mispronounced Mahoney, McConey.
How's it pronounced? It's McConey. Yeah.
And McConey.
Everyone says McConey, don't they?
Which is fine. Or I get a lot of Mahoney. And if you're old, if you're old enough to remember, what's the name of the movie? The Police, whatever it is. But I get a lot of mispronunciations of the name. But I don't take. It's like whatever.
But yeah, so I had. So the credibility and just saying like, look, this is we kind of Going Concern has its own style. It's irreverent. Yes, it can be sarcastic. Yes, we kind of cover things that are kind of distasteful.
Right.
But the credibility is still important. And so, getting somebody like Tim Ryan to speak to us on the record and field those questions, like getting that stuff in the record is important, not only for people that work at PwC so that they can see that their leadership has some visibility just outside of their own bubble.
Absolutely.
But also, I think from a journalism standpoint, it's like asking him questions about these things that are of interest to the public in general. So it's a lot of hard work. Journalism is hard. And I'm
Sure.
probably paid better than most journalists, which is a shame.
Interesting.
You know, it's just, it's a hard business, and I don't know, I really respect the work that journalisms of just at every level that they have to do.
Absolutely. And critical to our democracy.
Yeah,
But-
absolutely.
But we don't cover politics of the
We don't, not going there.
On the Doug
Not
McConey
going
blog.
there.
And
If you want an overdose of politics, you can just follow me on Twitter, and then you'll unfollow me probably after about 10 minutes.
So Caleb, talk a little bit about your team now, because you started as a kind of one-man show. You're
Yep.
now, I don't know how many people you have working for you, with you
Yep.
at Going Concern. So talk a little bit about how that's grown, and what are some lessons that you've learned as a leader now managing people.
Yeah, so it's still mostly a one-man show.
Okay. Who are all those others like?
Well,
that are-
so
how
we've
does that
got-
work with all the other the other
So
people
a lot of our
participating?
contributors are they're just that, contributors.
Okay.
They're not full-time employees, but they have some connection to accounting, and they have their own voice. They have their own kind of unique style of wanting to engage people on the site. And so, we started doing editorial cartoons recently, and Adrienne Gonzalez has been a writer on the site for a long time, pretty much since the beginning.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of her.
Yeah, she's great.
She's great. She's got
Yeah.
a great voice.
Yeah.
And, you guys both have unique kind of voices.
Yeah.
And great perspectives.
And one of our newer writers had Big Four experience also, and she was an IT auditor.
Okay.
So she has that perspective, which
Okay.
you think, oh, what's the difference? I'm like, actually, quite a bit of difference. It's really been interesting. She tackles lots of like high-level, big technology topics. She just wrote about cryptocurrencies yesterday, which is great.
And do you edit their
I do.
content? And
I
you
read
have to
everything.
give them advice and kind of constructive criticism.
Yep.
And,
So I read everything, and I like to kind of be hands off in terms of edit. Like I don't want to touch people's voice I want that to really come through. But what I try to do mostly is offer suggestions or just ask questions. Whether it's about a particular topic within something, or if I want something fleshed out further, I just try to offer guidance as far as making things clearer, or maybe more concise. So yeah, I'm very much an editor, and that is editing. To being a good editor is really hard, just like being a reporter or a journalist is really hard. Being an editor is equally difficult, and it's a completely different job. So to wear both of those hats has been a really great challenge for me, and it makes my brain work in completely different
Sure.
ways. Yeah. And so, the way you edit one person, at least for our site, it's very different. The way you handle one person is very different from the way you handle somebody else. Some people are really dismissive of suggestions, which is fine. If they write good content initially, then I don't really have to worry about it. And then other people need lots of hand-holding, where you're kind of like, oh, I need more here and here and here and here. Think about this. So you have to be flexible with styles, personalities.
Sure.
And so being open, being receptive of people's communication styles, for example, but also letting them still be kind of true to themselves, and being able to create the things that they want to create.
one of the vlogs that I have not done is emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're describing.
Yeah.
And I've thought a lot about it, and it's hard to describe and discuss, and you did a very nice job with that as far as really emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And understanding kind of the mind of the person that you're having to lead or direct or edit, whatever the case
Yeah,
may be.
empathy is a big thing for me.
Right.
I don't know if it was maybe because I read Charlotte's Web so many times as a child, but it's just like empathy is like, I really find myself putting myself in somebody else's shoes. And so when I offer criticism or feedback of some kind, I just want to do it in a way that's supportive. And I've learned that in some of the writing workshops and things I've done.
Okay.
Whereas always say what you like first.
Right.
Like give the appreciations first, and then you can ask questions, and then you can offer suggestions after that. Because if you go straight in with like the critical stuff, and it's like, this is what you need to work on, then the person kind of doesn't have anything to hold on to.
Right.
And so I really took to that, where to say, come with the good stuff first, you know, because then people, they realize that you recognize the stuff they've done well. And we all need that, because
Absolutely.
then it becomes just like, I don't know, it feels like you're being suffocated by stuff that you have to improve on, when you're really, most of the time, you're good at lots of things.
Right. So let's maybe turn the conversation to, because I'm fascinated to hear about kind of how Going Concern has expanded and finding other entrepreneurial avenues, given all the eyeballs that you get from accountants, you know, at all various levels. And so, you know, maybe we start with Accounting Fly,
Sure.
And kind of how that came to be, and you know what your involvement is with Accounting Fly.
Okay. So
And maybe we take about another, I don't know, 10 or
whatever.
15
I'm good.
minutes. Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
whatever
this
you
is
need.
great. Okay.
So Accounting Fly, it's kind of a long story, but Going Concern has been shopped around a couple times.
Okay.
So when it was founded, it was with Breaking Media, which is out of New York, and then it was acquired by, after about 18 months, it was acquired by a UK company called Sift Media.
Okay.
And it was a property of Sift for about 5 years, and then it was acquired by Accounting Fly just about 2 years ago. Actually, about 2 years ago this week. And so Accounting Fly really it was founded by my boss, Going Concern's publisher, Jeff Phillips. Jeff and his co-founders they wanted to create a site for college students to help them get placed in their first jobs. And it kind of evolved. After a while, they kind of realized that accounting was this kind of massive talent pool, and they started focusing just on accounting. And they created, essentially it's a job board strictly for accounting jobs and accountants. And so Going Concern is kind of that pool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's kind of the, I guess, the business connection, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And so what I do for Accounting Fly, or what I have been doing, is I've been the head of content. And so what I've tried to do is try to work with the employers that partner with Accounting Fly and help them formulate content that is going to engage the readership of Going Concern, and so that they can, because ultimately what they want to do is they want people to work for them, right? Employers want employees,
right?
And so what we try to do is we try to find the values that are important to those employers, and try to tap into what the common ground is with the readership.
Okay.
And just try to connect those two people, or those two entities together. And that is it's a really big challenge sometimes. Okay. I mean, we talk about it all the time. And because, if employers, I think, have a hard time, especially smaller employers, have a hard time like knowing what they're about. Mm-hmm. Like in a big organization like PwC, there's all these people that just get to sit around and like think about, what is this firm about? Even when you talk to Tim Ryan, like that's what he thinks about a lot.
Like, his probably number one
his
job.
His number one job is like to think about, what is this firm about? Right. What do we stand for? Right. What do we want to do?
Right.
It isn't simply about numbers or client service.
Right. He's got people responsible for international tax, and for the audit, and for the quality, and absolutely.
And so it's kind of taking that mindset where you've got somebody whose sole job is to kind of identify those things and say, okay, people, go make it happen. When you're doing that for smaller companies, you kind of have to help them along that path.
Sure.
Where you think about it from a really high level point of view. It's like, all right, what's important to you as a company? What's important to your employees? And sometimes you find that employers haven't thought about that stuff at all. They just want to say, we have great work-life balance, we work hard and we play hard, and we serve clients better than anybody else. It's just like, Everybody says
Right,
that.
totally.
So you really kind of have to kind of do what we're doing, is where you really have to flesh it out. Like you really have to dig underneath to find what it is. In this day and age, if you're going to have a business, it has to be meaningful. Otherwise,
Right.
people don't care.
Right.
People don't want to work for you.
And then that's thrown into the millennial bucket.
Yeah.
But it's I think it's for everybody. Right?
Yeah.
People want to, even accountants, right,
Yeah.
and lawyers
Yeah.
want to feel like they're doing something meaningful.
Right.
You know, and I talk about that. The meaning that I find in my work is not, you know, advising clients on international taxation, right? It's the people that I get to work with and connect with and try to
Yeah.
make a meaningful difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
And that's as good as we can get as
Yeah, and I
accountants
mean
and
that's
lawyers
that's really squishy stuff, but
Yeah.
I mean, but it's true.
Right.
Like I feel like you're kind of, if you can't recognize kind of the personal touch that all of that has, then you really you need to go have a good cry or something. Like you really gotta, I mean, that type of stuff is really what makes a difference. And so, because if you look at it on this big transactional level,
Right.
then you're always going to be cynical. And I like being cynical. It's really made me good at what I do. But at the same time, I can still kind of do a 180 and say, okay, what are these, what's really going to make a difference? Like what good can come of it? And what can you do to help other people along the way? And so that's what we try to do. We try to like help these employers kind of recognize, like define their squishiness and be like, all right, if you identify that thing is going to connect with someone. Someone's going to read that, or someone's going to watch your video and they're going to say, yes, that's the thing. I want that. I want that in my life, in my career.
What advice would you give to your younger self? So if you're just graduating college, you know, what advice would you give where you're sitting here to your 22, 23-year-old self?
Okay, don't make any plans. Just, you know, be open to the possibilities. I didn't learn that until much later.
Well, Caleb Newquist from goingconcern.com. If you're not familiar with his website, I don't know why you're at this vlog and have not heard of Going Concern, but go and check out his website, check out Yarn, check out Accounting Fly, hopefully none of the PwC people, but or the PwC
Or the
people,
PwC
or the
people.
PwC people. But Caleb, thank you very
Yeah,
much for agreeing.
it was
This
fun.
was a ton of fun.
Thanks, Doug.
And thanks a lot for showing up in the Doug McConey vlog.
You bet.
Caleb Newquist.